I'm going to go ahead and get started then. I see we have quite a few participants joining us today. I want to thank you for that. And if you joined us in the last 15 minutes, then you had an endearing pre-show as the Condor crew and myself were getting things started here. Obviously, the Condor program is still operating. We're very excited about that. Shelter in place has not crippled us in our ability to continue. In fact, I think the Condors could probably care less, or maybe they're even a little bit happier that there's fewer people driving around on the roads. But really, we're able to continue on as is, but with changes in safety protocol, of course. And we're proud to continue this work. We've been doing it for 24 years now. We know we're on the right path, and I know that we're going to be successful, especially with such a great team of people that you'll hear from today. And by the way, I didn't introduce myself. For those of you that I have not met, I'm Kelly Sorensen. I'm the Executive Director of Ventana Wildlife Society, and we're the group that's reintroducing California condors to the wild and have done so, as I said, for the last 24 years. A lot of people have been asking us lately, how has this situation affected the organization? And it's a very good question. Many of you were scheduled or planning on coming to our annual fundraising event, Feathers in Flight, which was obviously canceled last month. And that's definitely having an impact on the bottom line. And so people have been asking about that. But for these last 24 years, we've always figured out a way to continue on. And it's because of donors and supporters such as all of you. So I just want to take this moment to thank you, especially those that have contributed recently. It's very much so needed right now. We have lots of condors coming out of the zoos, getting ready for release, and our job is more important than ever to release as many condors as we can and figure out the causes of death and resolve those problems. For example, the lead poisoning problem, we've really been tackling that head on by handing out free copper ammunition to hunters and ranchers, and we really feel like that's making some great traction. We're going in the right direction. We hope to see mortality get down to reasonable levels, and at that time, we can expect condors to start surviving on their own. I'll let Joe Burnett, the Condor program manager, and his field crew tell you more of the details of how condors are doing. But last but not least, I want to welcome and thank our guest, longtime volunteer, longtime donor, photographer, software engineer, and probably a bunch of other things, Tim Huntington. So Tim, thank you very much for being here today and sharing your insight on your photography and your work here at Ventana Wildlife Society, helping us restore condors to the wild. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joe and Tim.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm Joe Burnett. I'm the senior wildlife biologist with Ventana Wildlife Society. I've been very fortunate to work with condors the last 20 plus years in the wild and on the captive side. And it's been a real privilege to work with this big surf flock for so many years. I have an awesome crew that I want to introduce as well. That actually they'll introduce themselves. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a condor biologist. I've been with VWS for coming up on 5 years now.
I'm Darren. I'm also a condor biologist, and I'm coming up on a year here of being here as a biologist, but previously I was an intern, so I've been familiar with Ventana for a while.
Yeah, Amy and Darren are definitely condor gurus, and they're going to be helping me out today with the, I'm going to give a kind of a brief update. Our last Zoom presentation, we gave a real in-depth condor update. This one is going to be more focused on the nesting. But again, if you have questions at the end, use the comment box to post your question, and we'll get to them throughout, maybe at the end of the talk. But today I wanted to kind of give a briefer update so we have more time for Tim to show us his awesome photos. that he's taken over the years. So I don't want to steal too much of his time because us as biologists really enjoy Tim's photography. He's really captured, to me personally, what I see out in the field, what I've never seen a photographer capture with condors. So it's a real treat having him here today. He's been an incredible asset to the program, just really gracious with his own time, really, really incredible. So yeah, I'm gonna just go through the most exciting stuff going on right now with condors, obviously, is nesting. And this year has been an incredible nest year. We have 8 chicks that have hatched so far, and we have 1 more about to hatch. And those nests are spread out between Pinnacles National Park, who we collaborate with on releasing and reestablishing the flock in Central California. We have 3 pairs nesting over in the Pinnacles area, and we have 5 pairs on the coast. And there's also 1 more pair over at Pinnacles that is very close to hatching an egg. So if everything goes according to plan here, we are on track for a record-breaking year and having 9 chicks produced in the wild, which would be truly incredible. The photo I have featured here, this is right off our Condor Cam, Nest Cam, which is live streaming this year. And this is our newest chick from the Redwood, number 1031. This is a real recent photo, but it's been a real great tool for folks to tune in and look and see how condors are raising chicks in the wild. It's kind of a real first time look. So here's some breaking news. I'll let Amy give us an update on this one. This is a new nest, not a new pair, but a new nest that just popped up, and it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, so we were happy to hear about this one. It's a new pair. They've both nested previously successfully, but with different partners. And so very helpful local alerted us to this, and we went out there. We had no idea that they were nesting already, but they had a chick that was a little bit over a month old, and it's looking great. And yeah, they're doing their thing.
Yeah, and this is a photo from recent. The chick is now definitely getting bigger. It's way older than we had originally thought. It's almost, but based on this photo, it's about 2 months old. So this is pretty exciting. And again, this is a different nest type. You know, everyone's watching the nest cam is watching the condors nesting in a redwood. This is in a cave, so condors are pretty opportunistic. They'll nest in a cave or the cavity of a tree. So it just goes to show you some of the different nest types they can use. This is a typical inland type nest site you'll find on a cliff in a real hollowed out big cave. It offers really good protection from predators that can't come in from the front or the back or climb up the cliff. If we were to pan out on this nest site, you would see a big dramatic cliff dropping below. So this is a pretty exciting development here. Yeah, and the Condor Nest Cam, it really is just a really exclusive look at condor nesting, and we really encourage you all to tune in and keep track of the growth and the development of this chick. It really is incredible. We've never had a camera this high quality streaming in a condor nest, and it also has the ability to zoom in, and you probably captured some of those moments where we're able to zoom in on the chick and really see the detail and really look into the eyes of this young nestling. Pretty incredible. It has sound, and it is solar powered, so it will go off the grid periodically. Not too often, but we occasionally lose the signal, but it always comes back in, thankfully. And again, this is just not only for you guys to watch, but as biologists, this is an incredible tool for us to basically just monitor the welfare of this nest and also learn more about their nesting biology. So we're learning along with you guys with this nest. This tree in particular is a monster redwood. We have no idea how old it is. It's definitely pushing probably close to 1,000, probably between 500 and 1,000 years old, and which is just weird to even say that there's trees out there that old. This tree has endured a bunch of fires, which actually helped create this nest site and burned out the cavity they're actually nesting in. We have to climb the tree to put the nest cam in before the pair start nesting. We go when the area is quiet and the pair aren't around before the nest season kicks in, and we sneak in, put the camera in. It's a very small camera that's able to hide. We're able to hide it in the nest really well, and thankfully the pair don't mind it at all. The pair, this is one of our oldest pairs, Kingpin. He has the red tag 67 and his mate Redwood Queen, red tag 90. They're our most experienced and most productive pair. And they produced 9 chicks to date, including 1031. So it's pretty exciting to watch these old birds still producing so many and helping, basically just contributing so much to the flock and the recovery. They last nested in 2018 and raised Pasquale. And that was a really exciting time. Camera captured really cool moments, just like the camera's capturing this year. We have an update on Pasquale. We were able to catch him last spring and put a tag on him. He's now carrying an orange tag on his wing, and it's with a black number 14. And he has a radio tag, so we're able to keep up with his whereabouts. And Tim actually caught up with Pasquale not too long ago, just this past spring, and got this incredible photo, one of many that Tim has taken. And this really captures how well Pasquale is doing. He's integrated into the flock. He's kind of come into his own. He's obviously weaned off from mom and dad, and he's now a strong member of the flock. These are some updated videos. We can grab little clips of some really cool moments over the last month of the chick, and we're gonna play those now. And Darren and Amy can pipe in, but I love this one. You can see the chick playing with the parent's tag, and she's not quite acceptable. You know, there's a lot of playtime, which I enjoy watching. I think it's unusual to see in birds. To see this type of play, so it's been pretty interesting to watch. Let's go here. Yeah, here's another clip that's pretty good. Yeah, it's really cool to capture these really private moments between a parent and its chick. And I always think of it as something that you would almost see more with mammals, and to see this with birds is really interesting. And again, if you guys tune in on the cam, it's pretty ranging. It can be very quiet at times, and then it can be very active. So yeah, let's go to another video. Oh, and this was just taken a couple days ago. I love this. This is the really nice part of being able to have a pan tilt zoom cam, and you can literally see into the eyes of this young condor, and they have a amber color at this time. That eye color will change to a deep red when it becomes an adult. But you can see now how that curiosity, how inquisitive, he's just taking it in like a sponge, this little guy. So it's little guy or girl. We actually don't know the gender of the chick yet. So this is just one look into the nest cam, kind of a sneak peek. So definitely encourage everyone to go take a look. And this is a clip from the day. This is pretty cool. This is taken this morning. You can see how big the chick has gotten. It's basically grown from about the size of my hand, about a ½ pound, to roughly 4 pounds right now. So it's growing fast, and over the next 5 months, chick is literally going to quadruple in size. It's going to end up about 20 pounds. So you're going to literally watch this chick grow. And this was a cool clip from the day because it's the first time the chick's been able to really get into the sun. And it's literally just basking in the sun. That's the best way to put it. So yeah, without Darren and Amy want to add anything else they've seen, but you know, I'd love to just have this transition right into Tim's presentation. Let me get, I don't think I have anything more. Yeah, and again, go to our website to learn more. There's our website listed right there. And again, tune into the cam. It's a really great insight for everyone. And I can't say enough about it. And right now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to get Tim on board here. So Tim, you're the host now.
Okay, so let me just share this screen. So hopefully people can see a photograph there of two condors. Can someone give me a thumbs up if they can?
Yes.
Sweet.
It's on. We got other stuff on the screen too, Tim, just so you know.
Oh, you have? Hang on. I'm supposed to be just sharing that one screen.
It's all right. Take your time. There we are.
There.
Perfect. Excellent.
Cool. So, as Kelly mentioned, I've been volunteering with Ventana for quite a long time now, and I've been a photographer for quite a long time. I started off mainly shooting motorcycle racing, and then over the years I've transitioned, and now it's nearly all condors and marine mammals, whales and dolphins and things. But in the invitation for this meeting, the film I made back in 2015 was mentioned, and I'm assuming a bunch of you have seen that. The first thing I wanted to talk about was just give you a little story about how that film came into being. And this particular day, June 17th, 2015, was the day that sort of really kicked in for it to become a movie. This was a very foggy day. I volunteer track with the Ventana, so I had radio tracking equipment with me. I went down the coast of Big Sur, and I was tracking at one of the regular tracking locations, but I couldn't see more than like 20 yards. And I was getting a very strong signal for Condor 470, who's known as Fuego. And it was back in the direction I'd just driven. So I thought, well, I'll go back and see what happens. So I started driving back up about half a mile to one of the pullouts where you'll sometimes see condors. And I could see something in the fog, but I couldn't quite tell what it was. So I pulled over, carefully got out the car, looked over the barrier at the side of the road, and I could see these two condors on the edge of the cliff. And I thought, okay, cool, this would be fun. So got my camera out, started taking pictures of them between the trees. And typically what happens if you're standing by the side of the road in Big Sur with a camera with a big lens on it, is you stop traffic. Everybody wants to stop and see what's going on. But on this day, I'm assuming because it was very foggy, nobody stopped. So these two condors, the second one is 204 Amigo, 470's dad, and they were interacting with each other, and I was taking pictures. And then I thought, well, I've got the tripod in the car, maybe I'll get that out and shoot some video as well. So I got the tripod out, set the camera on the tripod, and now I'm thinking I'm bound to stop traffic now. There's a big tripod, there's a camera with a big lens, people are going to be stopping, but nobody stopped again. And so I got a bunch of still photos like this one. I got a bunch of video that appears in the film. And this went on for an hour. Nobody stopped. Cars were driving past me. I and the big lens were very obvious, and nobody stopped. It was fantastic. Then the fog started to clear, and the birds left. And then they came back, landed slightly lower down the cliffs. I took some more video. Then the fog was starting to clear more. They took off and they landed about 300 or 400 yards away from me, low down on the cliffs. And then a car stopped and asked me if I'd seen any condors. And I was able to point the condors out down on the cliff further down there, but I'd had them to myself for an hour. And the interaction between the two, I got such great footage of it. It's like, I'm going to have to make a film about this. I can't just keep taking these clips. I'm going to have to do something with them. And that was the sort of genesis of the film. Now, those of you who've seen the film, and those of you who are now looking at the nest cam, are familiar with Kingpin and Redwood Queen. I don't see them that often. They were in the film because I was lucky enough to accompany the biologists on one of their previous nesting attempts in that tree. But to see them on the coast, you don't see it very often, but occasionally you do. And this is a photo from September 2018, where I came across the two of them and two other condors that were sunning themselves down by the edge of the ocean. This wasn't a place that you often see condors. I just got lucky that they'd been picked up on the radio tracker, and so I pulled over and was looking for them. And so when you get opportunities like this, you take advantage of them. You can see it's a nice early morning. The sun's nice and low, so the light's nice. And I'm, again, standing in a pullout by the side of the road, and they're probably 200 yards away from me in this instance. And I've got full zoom on, and this is a bit of a crop. But you just hang around and see what happens when there's birds in the area. Typically, if I'm down in Big Sur for the day, I'll be hanging around for 3 or 4 hours hoping to see birds. And then here's another example. This was a day in October 2018. I'm driving down way north of where I would normally expect to see condors. This was down by the Rocky Creek Bridge, for those of you who are familiar with the area. I'm driving down there and I see a condor flying around as I'm driving. So I pull over at the Rocky Creek Bridge, and there's two condors. This is Redwood Queen 190, and then a juvenile 785 was there as well. And they're circling around above the bridge. So I'm thinking there must be something down below me. So then I start looking around on the beach from different vantage points from that pullout, and eventually I spot some turkey vultures, and then they're surrounded what turned out to be a dead sea otter. Now, I was there for 2.5 hours while the birds got comfortable with the situation, came down and fed on the sea otter carcass, and then left again. And one thing to note in this picture is this is on the way in. We can see here that 190 has got a very sort of flat throat area. There's basically a crop in here where the birds can store extra food, and it's currently empty. After the feeding event, as she was leaving again, we can see the difference here. We've got a bulging crop. So there's like 2 to 3 pounds of extra food in there. And she was actually taking that back to Pasquale. This was in the area when Pasquale was still dependent on his parents. And so she'd fed on the sea otter and was heading back. Now I'm going to show you a picture of them actually feeding. It's not super horrific or anything, but it's so here they are on the beach. This is the sea otter carcass, and they've managed to get into it. And this is Red Queen, and this is 785, and they're fighting over a little piece of the sea otter. And here's a good example of a size difference. We've got a turkey vulture down here, and we can see that the condors are way bigger than the turkey vulture. So these guys fed, then Redwood Queen headed back to wherever Pasquale was. And then as excuse me, as Joe already mentioned, this is Pasquale today. Well, this is March. This was taken in March at the High Peaks area of Pinnacles National Park. And this last winter, I've had a lot of luck, both at Pinnacles and along the coast, with getting some really nice photos. So now, for the rest of this little presentation, I'm just going to show some photos that were taken mainly this last winter, and also talk a little bit about some of the techniques and some of the things I look for when I'm trying to take pictures, and some of the ways I have the camera set up, what camera I use, and that sort of thing. But one thing I should mention is there's no correct way to take a photo. There's lots of correct ways to take a photo. What I'm going to be talking about is just what suits me and what works for me. It's not like this is the way it should be or anything like that. It's just techniques that work for me. And so I'll just talk through some of those things. And if some people I know wonder what camera equipment I'm using, I typically am using a Canon 7D Mark II with a Canon 100 to 400 millimeter zoom. Now, that gives me about an 18 times zoom when I'm fully shooting with the 400 millimeter. And most of the photos you'll see in this presentation are cropped from the original as well. So they're actually more zoomed than 18 times. Now this picture here is one of my particular favorites this winter. It's one of the things I learned many years ago shooting sports is the background of the picture is almost as important as the foreground. If you're shooting motorcycle racing and there's a porta potty in the background, then you kind of ruin the shot. You wouldn't see the porta potty when you're taking the picture, but if it's there when you look at it later, that's all you see. And so concentrating on birds, if you can get a nice clean background like this, yeah, it's all gravy basically. Now, my camera is set up to shoot manually. Everything's manual apart from focusing. I do use autofocus, but the ISO, the aperture, the shutter speed, they're all set to manual. And I do that because I want as much control over the camera as I can get. I want a reasonably high shutter speed to freeze action. I want a reasonable depth of field to get the whole bird in focus. And then I'll play around with ISO and keep that as low as I can so that the picture's as least grainy as possible. And this picture is a great example of how the manual settings work for me. If the camera was on automatic, it's going to try and balance the dark background with the lightness of the bird and probably overexpose the bird. But as you'll see in this set of photos, these 9 photos here are the sequence of shots. And this picture down here, what's that? 6 is the one that I just showed you. So these shots were all taken. So my camera is set up for this environment, the amount of light hitting the bird, basically. And I've taken pictures before the bird flew. I've set my exposure how I want it to be. I've used the histogram on the camera to make sure I'm not blowing out highlights and things like that. Then as the bird flew, it started flying, and then you can see in this third frame, it started to fly into the shadow of one of the volcanic spires or pinnacles. Now, the amount of light hitting the bird hasn't changed, so the exposure the camera's set up shouldn't change either. If you were shooting with one of the automatic modes or semi-automatic modes, the camera's going to start changing the exposure here because of the dark background. Now, for me, because I grew up shooting manually, this is what works for me. And we can see here as the bird continues to fly through this shadow area, all these shots are nicely exposed. And then once we get down to this 8th frame, we can see that the bird is now venturing into the shadows. Only the very edge of the left wing is still in the sunshine. And then in this frame that almost looks black, if you look very carefully, you can just see the 2 wing tags. But this is where me shooting on manual fails, because if you were shooting on automatic, the camera would have opened up the exposure here and you'd have got a shot that would have been somewhat good. But this is the shot that I was hoping for, and the manual settings like enabled me to get it. Now, one of the things I also do that is a bad habit is I try and zoom right in on things, shoot really tight, and I lose context. So every now and again, I remember to try and shoot wide and give some context. And here we've got a picture of 199, the great one, no longer with us, but this was back in September of 2018, and he's flying around in Big Sur. And this is one of Big Sur's signature peaks, Pico Blanco. And he was just circling probably about half a mile to a mile away from me, but he was just lining up with this peak. And so I was just taking pictures. And you can only just tell it's a condor, but the whole nice framing of it works. And then I have this, this is another shot. This was taken this year. And this is 204 Amigo again. And this was in Big Sur. And this was actually taken with a wide angle lens. And the wideness allowed me, obviously the bird is fairly close, flying right by the edge of the road. And the wideness allowed me to capture more of the scene. Now there is a shot that I've had in my head for about 10 years now of a condor. It's with a certain background, and I've not managed to get that shot yet. I've failed twice when things lined up, but I've not got it yet. This is as close as I've gotten, and this isn't the shot I want, but I do like this shot. And there's one that I'm aiming for. I'll get it one day. And I've been trying for 10 years. So it's not necessarily super easy to get condors the way you want, but it's always worth the trouble to go out and see if you can. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that I do use autofocus. So I'm just going to geek out for a second here. And this is the number of autofocus points that my camera has. All these squares are autofocus points. But what I have my camera set up so that pressing the shutter button doesn't focus. I have two different buttons on the back of the camera that will initiate two different types of focusing. The first one is these 4 center points that are highlighted red in this image. So if I hit my left focus button, these 4 points light up, and whatever is in that area of the frame, the camera will try and follow as it moves around within the frame. I'll use this most of the time. I'll use this for birds in flight. And I try and get the bird in the middle of the frame, then start focusing and hope that I can keep the bird in the middle of the frame so that the focus can keep up with it. So that's one way I have of focusing. The second way is this very middle of the very center. It's a tiny focus point. It's very hard to get on things, but it works great if you've got a condor that's standing there, not doing much, perched. You can put that center focus point on the eye of the condor and try and get the eye, it be the focal point of the image. And so I'll switch between the two. I've got 2 different buttons, so I can just hit one button to focus with the 4, one button to hit focus with this very center of center. And this very center of center is what allowed me to get this shot. This is again at Pinnacles up in the high peaks area. This is Condor 800. And 800 had landed above one of the hiking trails and was warming the wings. And so I'm on the hiking trail below, and I was able to position myself so that these primary feathers overlapped with the head. And then I was standing up, bending down. My old knees were complaining because I was trying to get just the right angle where I could put that center of center point on the condor's eye and get that to be the focus and not the feathers. And the bird was only like this for maybe 2 minutes, maybe less. And I took a whole bunch of photos because I knew I wasn't going to be able to capture it precisely, I'd have to be looking at the pictures afterwards. But I was very lucky to be able to get this. This is a shot I've seen other condor photographers get similar shots to this, and this was one of the shots I kind of wanted in the bank. And this day provided it. It was very nice to get this shot. Now, one thing to note here, and the biologists will probably have already noticed this, is this primary feather is not as thick as the other ones and is drooping down slightly. And that gave me the gap here to get this in there. Now, this feather will have been trimmed during handling a health check. And then the trimmings of the feather would have been sent off to the lab so that they could get a lead history of this bird over time. A primary feather gives about 3 months worth of lead history of the bird. And so I was also lucky on this day that the bird that was sunning itself had this primary that gave me just a little bit extra gap in between the feathers to be able to get this shot. So as I said, I had a great winter at Pinnacles. My typical modus operandi was to get there early, hike up before the sun came over the top of the peaks, hope to find some birds that maybe have spent the night up there, and get some photos in the nice winter light. Now this shot is of 8:77. This was taken at 8 a.m. The sun still hadn't come up much. It hadn't certainly got over to this side of this is West Pinnacles. It hadn't got over to this side of the thing. So I'm having to shoot this picture at ISO 2000. So it's pretty dark, and I really had to ramp up the ISO, and you might not be able to see it on this zoom image, but if you look at the original, there's quite a lot of noise in the image because the ISO is so high. Again, I'm using the center point to focus on an eye. In this case, I was focusing on this right eye because the pine needles were interfering with me trying to get it on the left eye. And this bird, the tree that this bird was in was actually right above the hiking trail. But if you hiked underneath the bird, you couldn't see it because there was too much tree in the way. So I'd hike back down the trail 2 or 3 zigzags down, and then I could see into the tree and see the bird. So then it's like a waiting game. I'm going to wait for this bird to fly. I don't know what else might be going on elsewhere in the park, but I'm going to guess this bird's going to fly in the not too distant future, and I want to be there when it does. So in this case, I only had to wait around 20 minutes, which is quite short. And then the bird took off, and it took off and flew right over my head. And so when it first left the tree, I was able to zoom back out, but then as it went right over my head, I had too much lens. And so this was all I could pretty much get in the frame as it went over me. But I don't know, I'm sure some of you out there have had that experience where a bird, one of these condors flies right over your head, pretty close. It's addictive. The first time it happened to me was many years ago in Big Sur, and it's one of the things that has hooked me on condors. Now that same day in Pinnacles, it was a pretty good day, I was able to get this shot of 726, little stinker, being hassled by a raven. Again, this was before the sun came up, and 726 was hanging out with 692, and this raven was tormenting them for a little while. And then after that, once the sun came up, condors will often warm their wings. And so, again, this was the same day. A while later, once the sun was high enough that it was hitting the condors. And that's another little tip if you're out there with and you find condors in first thing in the morning and they're somewhere in the shade, is if it's somewhere that the sun's going to hit, just hang around until the sun hits and then see if they'll warm their wings before they take off for the day. And I've had a lot of luck just waiting around for that sort of thing to happen. And this day was one of those days. So that's, and then here's another photo that a lot of people seem to like. This was taken at the top of high peaks, and I was already up there this particular day, and I caught a glimpse of a bird around the corner. So I sort of hiked around the corner for a couple of minutes, and then there was 3 birds circling. I always have the camera out ready, and it's always on, so the amount of time it takes me to get ready to take a picture once I'm somewhere is very minimal. And in this case, it paid off, because these 3 birds lined up like this about 15 seconds after I got around the corner. I was able to shoot off 2 frames with them somewhat lined up. This is the nicer of the 2. And then I spent about 15 minutes hoping they'd line up again as they were flying around, and they never did. I never managed to get more than 2 in the frame after this particular shot. So it's just a nice piece of luck. 2 of these birds, these birds are 700, 678, 688. And 700 and 678 are a new pair. And I don't know what that line is. This is them a few weeks later. Again, I was just up at the top of high peaks. I knew there was birds in the area, that some had flown overhead. And then these 2 just blasted around the corner, one and done, flew right by me, and then went off somewhere else. And I was just lucky that I saw them coming and managed to blast off some frames as they went by. And one of them, they just lined up really nicely, and I was able to get this shot. It also helps here that there's some interest in the sky, so you get some nice sky. And one of the things I try to do with condor shots is always be able to see the eye of the condor. It's not such a nice photo if you can't see the eye. If you can just see the back of the condor, or it's flying away, or its head's turned so that head's in shadow, it's not so nice. If you can get a shot where you can see the head, it's in the light, and you can see the eye, even if the eye is tiny, it just seems to make the shots better. So there's obviously exceptions to that, but most of the time I'm trying to have the eye visible as well. Like if I've got a condor flying towards me and it's looking around, as they often do, I'll wait until it turns its head into the sunshine before I start taking pictures, because they just look nicer when that happens. Now I'm going to move on to, so that was my winter at Pinnacles. I had some fantastic days at Pinnacles this last winter, but I also had some fantastic days on the coast. Now I was very lucky this last fall and winter that I got to accompany the biologists when they were doing nest observations on this nest. This is 646 Kadana, and this is chick 1003 in the nest. This is a redwood tree, top of a redwood tree, and this was, inside there was the nest. This nest was on private property in Big Sur, and the owners thankfully granted us permission to be able to get on there. You want to say something, Joe?
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to get unmuted.
Okay.
Keep going, you're rolling.
And so the property owners allowed us access, and I was able to accompany biologists when they were going there. So we'd go along once a week, once every 2 weeks, and spend 5 or 6 hours staring at this tree through scopes and through big lenses, and got to see some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and this chick is doing really well. We get sightings quite a bit. It's now fledged and out flying. We haven't tagged this chick yet, but obviously with the COVID going on, we're going to hopefully, when COVID restrictions are lifted, we'll be able to get a tag on that guy.
So this is a typical setup, a scope with an iPhone attached to it. And some of the videos you've been seeing on Instagram from Ventana, this is that in action. This is Amy's specialty. And then this is one of my cameras with the lens on it, and this is on a tripod. I was trying to shoot some video, but the nest, even though we got this fantastic access, the nest was actually quite a long way away from where we could see it. And so this shot is quite heavily cropped from the original. And and then I just got lost for a second here. Oh yeah, so this chick fledged the nest. I actually happened to be there the day it fledged the nest. It was not a photogenic event. The chick sort of was trying to get up and down the tree. It was below the nest, and then every time it went up a branch, it came down too, and eventually disappeared into the undergrowth. And then the next time I got to go, a little while later, it was with Amy, and we spent a while wandering around different parts of this property trying to find where this chick had gone to, because we knew it was no longer in the nest. It fledged, but we couldn't see it. We could hear some rustling here and there that we suspected was the bird, and 204 Amigo, one of the fathers of this bird, was in the area, and so we were pretty sure he knew where the chick was, but we couldn't see it. And we split up, we were looking around, and after probably about an hour and a half, he popped up. He climbed up a branch, and 1003 was there on what turned out to be a fantastic day. Again, I got so lucky, that this bird, the one branch in this massive copse of trees, the one branch that he climbed up on, was close enough to take photos from the very limited access we have in the area.
Secondly, I love this shot, Tim, because you captured what we see out in the field a lot, that perfection, how perfect their feathers are when they come out of a nest. You know, when a chick is first fledged, you can just see those feathers are immaculate.
Yeah. And on this particular day, the light is really nice and soft. If it was sunny, there'd be all sorts of harsh shadows going on, and you wouldn't really be able to tell what was going on. You have harsh shadows across the bird, and so the fact that the bird popped up nice and close, combined with the really nice soft light caused by a high marine layer, was just perfect. So we're watching this, and this is a shot. This is 1003 on the same branch. And here's one of the Dad's 204 Amigo up on this tree here. And it's like, this is already super lucky that I've got this shot here with the two birds in. Well, then it got even better, because Amigo came in to the branch that 1003 was already on. And I just can't believe my luck here. We can see that there's a little bit of sunshine now, but it's still heavily covered with the mist. It's very soft light. There's no harsh shadows. And 204 comes in, and then 204 feeds 1003 while we're just standing there watching.
Such a great shot.
And yeah, this was just this awesome experience to see this, and for it to be so photogenic as well was just an amazing bonus. So I really have to thank Ventana for letting me tag along on these particular nest observations.
Put in your time, Tim. I mean, I can speak to that. You know, I think everyone has to realize that how many hours you put in to get these magical photos. You know, you do it. You definitely put in your dues, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it's always fun, so I don't mind. So after this, 1003 started to go further afield, and that's not always such a good thing. But after a while, 1003 found their way down to be near the road. Now this is a pullout by the side of the highway, and if you look carefully, 204 Amigo, one of the dads, and 1003 are in the top of this pine tree. And when they're somewhere that obvious, it stops traffic, as you can see, and people are excited to see condors in action. And so on this day, it looked like, obviously I don't really know what happened, but it looked like 1003 was kind of freaked out by the breeze and landed in that tree, and then Amigo came in to sort of make sure he was okay, and then trying to get him to fly away again. But 1003 has carried on and got further afield. This picture was taken on a day as a winter storm was clearing. Now this big set of trees here is the area that the nest is in. You can't see the nest from this direction, but it's in the back of one of these trees. And I was radio tracking, and I knew that Mom 646 was around somewhere. And so I just waited and hoped that eventually it'd clear and I could find where they were if they were visible. So about half an hour later, the mist had cleared enough, and I was able to see Mom's tag. And this isn't the nest tree. This is a tree probably a quarter of a mile away, but it was in the area of the nest. And you could see, I couldn't see 1003 to start with, but then they stuck their wings out to dry them off from the winter storm. And so I got to see them from a long way away. But again, when I was talking about before, I'm often too focused on being right in on top of birds. And this was a great chance to take a picture with some context.
Yeah,
And
Tim,
then
when you're ready, we got some questions coming in, and they're kind of, some of them are specific to kind of what you've gone to your stuff, and then some are to us. So let me know when you want to start answering questions.
Okay, I got 2 more photos to go through, and then
all right.
So as 1003 has branched out, you might say, got some nice backgrounds as well, because I was talking earlier about nice backgrounds. Now here's a shot of 1003 with the ocean. Amazing. And as Joe was saying earlier, you've got the nice pristine feathers, because and in this case you've got a nice clean background of the ocean. It's not flying over any of the rocks. And then this is a final shot of 1003. This was taken at the same place as that very first shot of Amigo and Fuego that started this presentation. This was taken about 10 yards away from where that shot was taken. This bird, 1003, sort of come full circle. And now we don't see 1003 so much. It's gotten more confident, independent, and it's off and doing their own thing. So I haven't seen 1003 in quite a while now, but it was a fantastic winter to get to follow the birds at pinnacles, and then to get to see 1003 go from nest through to dependent fledgling to independent bird. It's been fantastic.
Well, you captured it really, really well. I mean, you can really just see the personality of that bird in that photo, you know, just that age in particular, you know, that they've got this whole new world to discover. You can kind of, you know, your photos definitely capture a depth that I've always loved, you know. Yeah, we got some good questions here. I saw some more specific to, there's one here. You set your camera up. This is from Carrie AM. You set your camera up for back button focus. Do you follow birds as art?
What was the last part of the question?
Do you follow birds as art? Like, I guess, are you inspired? You know, I guess she's asking.
Oh, yeah. So yes, I do use back button focus, and that I came more from the motorcycle world because I wouldn't want continuous focus. I'd focus on a piece of racetrack, and then I knew the professional motorcyclists, they hit their marks every lap. And so I set it up with where I wanted to take the picture, and then pan with the bike as they came through there, and then click the shutter when they got to where I wanted. So I just had it pre-focused where I wanted to take the picture. And so I use autofocus a lot more, but I do have back button focusing, and I have two different back button focusing. So one kicks off the 4 sensor points, and one kicks off the inner of the inner, and I can just move my thumb between the 2 buttons and use whichever focusing mechanism I want.
Very cool. Yeah, so another question from Steve and Kathy Schwartz. I'm familiar with Grimes Point. Where else in Big Sur do you often see condors? I got great shots of Amigo last summer.
Oh, they're in the right place. Most of these shots are taken within a mile of Grimes Point, further south, anywhere really between the Nepenthe and Julia Pfeiffer Burns is the prime area, but then the couple of miles north and south of Grimes is a very good place, and most of my Big Sur shots are taken in that area.
And a question, Sam, kind of follows along that same thread. Is there a season in which you find it easier to get good shots of condors? And are there seasons
I would say
look on the coast versus at pinnacles?
I will go to the pinnacles in the winter because it's too hot in the summer. I can't cope with the temperatures, and also hot days you tend to get a lot of heat haze, which makes your images blurry. So I tend to shoot more in the winter, and I'll try and get to pinnacles because also in the winter with the shorter days, it's easier to get there before the sun gets too high. And so pinnacles in particular for me is I'll start going about October, I'll finish going about March, and then I'll wait until the next October before I go again. And on the coast, it doesn't, there's no real season on the coast. Again, you'll still get hot days where you can't really take pictures. And then this time of year, in the middle of the day, the light's kind of harsh unless you get a nice sort of high overcast. But the coast is any time of year, even, you know, as we saw right at the beginning, foggy days can still be fantastic. So even if it's foggy, I'll still go down and hope for something. Your chances are better if it's a clear day, but I do have the advantage of having the radio tracking equipment, so I can, on the coast anyway, I don't use that at pinnacles, but on the coast, because I'm tracking for the biologists as well, I will have some advantage to know where birds might be by using the radio tracker to get me in the ballpark. But most of the time it's done with eyesight as well.
Yeah, you actually answered Donna Moyer's question. She was asking that how we're able to tell who the bird is when it's flying at such a big distance. And yeah, you know, I want everybody to know that when Tim is out doing his photography, he's also helping the project, and he's tracking the birds and locating them and letting us know who he sees. So it's been a huge, it's been a win-win really for us. And I remember when we first met Tim, it wasn't me, it was some other folks on the crew said, hey, there's this guy down there. He's always down there taking photos. He's got these huge lenses, but he's always in the right spot. And he's really, really genuinely interested in the condors. And over the years, we got to know Tim, and we finally said, hey, you want to track these guys? So it was a really cool, it was really cool how it all developed. And we earned a great trust with Tim, and he's really passionate about the birds, and you guys can see it in his photography. It's clear. So yeah, we're really happy to have him. Yeah, some of these other questions look like they're a little more condor biology related. I'll go. Jess Williamson asks, for the checkups on condor chicks, do condors not get too defensive of the chick because you keep it nearby, or do the condors possibly recognize the biologist? Fortunately, we've gotten away from having to do checkups on condor chicks in the nest, and we handle them for the first time at about a year in age when they follow mom and dad back to the release site. So we capture the birds using the same pen that we release condors from. So it's a real passive trapping technique, low stress, and again, the trapping is geared around putting new transmitters on them, so we know the transmitters are critical in knowing where the birds go, if they live or die, and if where they end up nesting. And then we also, when we grab them, we collect blood samples. Say for the chick, we'll be able to use that blood sample to determine gender and confirm genetics. Sometimes these chicks actually don't have the parent, but the biological parents aren't the ones who raised it. And we've had that happen a couple times over the years. And so, yeah, and the blood samples are obviously used to check blood lead levels, and we're monitoring that. And that was actually another question on the list here related to lead. It was, what was it? Sorry. Let's see, it was, have you detected any difference in condor health since the law forbidding lead ammo went into full force last year? Yeah, that went into effect July 2019. It's still very early in that process of evaluating whether lead is dropping in the environment. It's going to take at least, from the time of the full ban going into effect, we're going to have to need at least 3 years data to really answer that question. But obviously the hope is that it will help, and we're also helping grease the wheels there by giving out free non-lead ammo to hunters and ranchers. They've been really supportive, and we want to support and make sure they're using non-lead to help the condors. Here we go. With a fair number of condors, this is from Karen White, with a fair number of condors being born in the wild, hallelujah, I love that. Are captive breeding programs at zoos still having a significant contribution to reintroduction? That's a great question, and yes, they are. We're not stopping releasing. Releases are more important now than ever because we're up over 100 birds in the wild in Central California. Right now is when we want to hit the gas pedal to the floor and really start releasing more birds and get basically really grow the population. What's great now is you have a flock that's kind of making it easier for birds to come in terms of the population. It's not such a small population that it's more spread out. They're branching into different areas of California. So the releases are definitely needed. So to have release birds, you got to have them being produced in captivity. So yeah, the captive breeding programs are actually are as important now as ever. Let's see here. Let me make sure I'm not missing any. I'll hear from Sheila Spiewak. How far is kingpin and redwood queen's redwood nest from the ocean? By the way, the condor flies, it's about a half mile, probably not even that, maybe even less. But to hike it, takes a couple hours. It's again, for a condor, it takes probably 5 minutes. It takes us 2 hours to get to it. So steep terrain, and for condors, it's really perfect. It requires very little energy for them to get around Big Sur, whereas for us, it's a lot of energy. Let me get to some other questions here. Oh, here's from Lynn Smith. What are the numbers of male and females in the Big Sur flock? I don't have the exact number, but it's roughly right now 60% males, 40% females. And we don't know if that's norm. Historically, the historic flock was about the same proportion. So there might be some natural design there for that. But right now it's leaning more towards males. And when we release birds, we try to split them up. We try to get even genders in our release groups. So if we're releasing a group of 6 birds, we try to get 3 males, 3 females. And again, you don't always have that option because you can only take what the birds are being produced in captivity. Some years more females are produced than males. It's really kind of luck of the draw. But for the most part, we end up on a 50-50 for releases, and then Just the pattern has been about a 60-40 split. Let's see here. Let's get to, we got a couple new questions coming in. You mentioned the new nest. This is from Megan O'Neill. You mentioned the new nest with the pair that had been with other mates. What are the reasons for condors to leave their former mates? You know, the condors have a social hierarchy that we know of that kind of governs the pecking order and who's the stature of different birds. And we think when there's shifts in that can actually cause pairs to break up. And again, this is a theory. We actually don't know why. It was always thought that condors mate for life, like kingpin and redwood queen. They've been together the whole get-go. It's not for every pair, but I think it does happen where you get shifts in hierarchy, and it causes pairs to repair. So yeah, 219 and 231, the birds that paired up for the first time, have had separate mates that they were successful with. So it is interesting to see them pair up together. But at the end of the day, as long as they end up and produce chicks and are successful, it's all good for the flock. Oh, here's another one from Marianne. It's, do they ever go as far north as Napa? The furthest north we've had the birds go in Central California is just south of Livermore, almost up in the Diablo Range. I would call that kind of not a normal thing. Maybe in the summertime we get a few flights up that direction by a handful of birds, but it's not I think as we release more birds and the population grows, that will become a more regular spot for the birds to go, and they'll naturally expand and maybe go jump beyond that point. We don't know exactly how they will do it when they do expand further north, you know, whether they go up the coast to the Coast Range or they go inland up towards Shasta that way. We just don't know. But we know they'll find a way. We got, hey, Megan also said, thanks for the amazing program. Fantastic photos, Tim. And you've got a Lee and Sue. Thank you, Tim, for the wonderful photos and explanation. Thank you, Ventana staff, for these. Yeah, a lot of, I'll take one more question here. Thank you, everybody, for the thank yous. One more from Donna Moyer. How did they begin being back in Big Sur? Yeah, the only reason condors are back in Big Sur are because of the efforts of Ventana Wildlife Society, our reintroduction efforts that began in 1997 with the release of, I remember I was part of that crew and releasing those first 6 birds. You know, at that time, I would have never dreamed we would be in this position we are now, with birds feeding on their own on the coast, with wild birds nesting. The condors have exceeded all our wildest expectations, and really the only challenge they have are human threats. You know, we got to get rid of lead poisoning as a threat, and these birds have plenty of habitat left, plenty of room to grow. So it's really, really awesome to see, and then to partner. We have such a great collaboration with Pinnacles National Park, our neighbor. They've jumped in and really helped kick things into gear. Can't give them enough credit for making the Central California population so successful. And again, our collaborators down south, who oversee the entire condor program, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they have a mirror population in Southern California of almost 100 birds. And again, they were the first to start releasing in the early 90s, and we kind of picked up the torch from them. And it's a team effort. And again, the captive breeding facilities, can't give them enough credit. LA Zoo, San Diego Zoo Global, Oregon Zoo, and then the other zoos that help out, Santa Barbara Zoo and Oakland Zoo, are huge help in terms of supporting not only the nest programs, and Oakland Zoo helps us with treating lead birds. It's a huge collaborative effort. So we're really glad that we were at the forefront of it, and glad to continue on with the job. So Tim, I think that's it. We got a lot of congratulations coming in, and thank you, Tim, for such an awesome presentation, and again for being such a great volunteer over the years. Been a real pleasure having you on board, and I love looking at your photos. They're always taking it one notch further. You know?
Well, thanks. Yeah, and thanks everybody for coming along and listening to me waffle on for a while. And yeah, I got to thank Ventana as well. They've allowed me to go along on these nest obs. They've allowed me to radio track, which, as Joe said, is a win-win. And yeah, I've just gotten more and more into condors over the years, and I don't see it dissipating anytime soon. And this next winter, I hope to be hiking pinnacles again and be on the coast tracking. And yeah, it's just great. It doesn't get old. If you get a condor fly 10 feet above your head, I think you'll be hooked for life. And thanks.
We hope to get our condor tours going again. And again, for now, the nest cam is really exciting. I think right now, I was just looking at it a second ago, and it was coming in and out, but it was yeah, you might see that sometimes the signal drops in and out, and it's because it is on solar. But like even right now, it's actually looking the mom, and yeah, it's 190. Redwood Queen is with the chick right now. The chick is tucked under her wing, so it's a great time to watch the cam. And yeah, thank you everybody for the awesome support, and come back next time. We're gonna have another one next month, so keep an eye out for that. We love giving everyone updates on what's happening. Exciting year, exciting nest season, and again, thanks for joining us. Thank you everyone.